We will move to Legislative Resolution 404.
Mr. President, Legislative Resolution 404, introduced by the Judiciary Committee and signed by its membership. Whereas the Nebraska legislative hearing rooms have been named in honor of certain historic political figures, and name plaques have been placed above the doors to identify the rooms and commemorate the individuals. Whereas on November 3, 1970, Senator Ernie Chambers was elected to represent District 11 of the Nebraska Unicameral Legislature. Whereas Senator Chambers was reelected in the elections held in 1972 through 2004 to continue his representation of District 11. Whereas due to the constitutional amendment placing a limit on the terms of members of the legislature, Senator Chambers' service as an elected member of this legislature will end on January 6, 2009. Whereas Senator Chambers will make history by being the member of the legislature with the longest length of service. Whereas Senator Chambers, during his years of public service, worked to make the state of Nebraska a better place for all, with particular focus on individual rights, minorities, the poor, and traditionally powerless groups, serving as a defender of the downtrodden. Whereas Senator Chambers drew national prominence for his legislative accomplishments, requiring the divestment of funds in stocks and bonds of corporations or financial institutions doing business in the Republic of South Africa, and his legislative accomplishments protecting Native American burial sites and returning human skeletal remains and burial goods to relatives in Indian tribes. Whereas additional major legislative accomplishments of Senator Chambers includes a ban on imposing the death penalty on the developmentally disabled and establishing district elections for city councils in cities of the metropolitan class, Class 5 school districts, and county boards in counties with over 300,000 inhabitants. Whereas Senator Chambers has served as a member of the Executive Board of the Legislative Council for 26 years, and in that leadership role and as a member of the legislature, he has been a champion of the legislature as a separate branch of government, promoting institutional autonomy and respect. Whereas Senator Chambers has served as a member of the legislature's Judiciary Committee for each of his 38 years of service in this legislature. Whereas naming the Judiciary Committee hearing room in Senator Chambers' honor would be a tangible display of the legislature's respect and honor. Now therefore be it resolved by members of the 100th Legislature, second session, that the legislature thanks Senator Chambers for his historic 38 years of service, that the Judiciary Committee hearing room, room 1113 of the Nebraska State Capitol, be named in his honor, that a name plaque naming room 1113 of the State Capitol, the Ernie Chambers hearing room, be placed above the door to identify the room and honor Senator Chambers, and that a copy of this resolution be presented to Senator Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Ashford, you're recognized to open on Legislative Resolution 404, recognizing Senator Ernie Chambers' years of service to the legislature in the state of Nebraska.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Thank you, Senator Chambers. Thank you, Speaker Flood, for managing this effort and suggesting that this would be an appropriate thing to do. And most certainly thank you to my fellow members of the Judiciary Committee who have all co-signed this resolution. Room 1113 is not the most prestigious looking hearing room in this building. In fact, it's probably the most shoddy looking of all the hearing rooms in this building. But it is, on many a day, a magical place. And those of us, and I see Speaker Beshear in the audience, and those of us who have had the opportunity to sit in that room with Ernie Chambers and listen, it's very much like listening to a great orchestra, a virtuoso, someone who can talk about an issue in a way that no one else can. The words that he uses, the phrases that he uses, the frowns, the smiles, the expressions are legendary to those of us who have had the opportunity to be with him in room 1113. A couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to be involved in naming a building in North Omaha after Ernie Chambers. While I was serving as executive director of the Omaha Housing Authority, the City Council of Omaha decided not to name a park after Ernie Chambers, even though the neighborhood wanted it done. So we decided at the Housing Authority that we would name what was one of the most luxurious apartment buildings in all of Omaha in the turn of the 20th century, that we had rehabilitated to make it the Ernie Chambers Court. And it was a grand occasion, and Senator Chambers came to that event, as did many, many people in his neighborhood, and to express their thanks to him for what he had done for them and for the North Omaha community. And it was a glorious day, and Senator Chambers spoke to his neighbors and accepted what we had done. Likewise here, this resolution reflects the desire, I think, of everyone in this body to do much the same thing, to thank him for his incredible service to the people of the state of Nebraska and the incredible service to us as legislators that he has done and he has made. I think, though, for me, why it is so important that this room no longer be 1113 but be Ernie Chambers' Judiciary Room is the children who have been influenced by Senator Chambers over the years. Just yesterday, I noticed a couple of children. One of them was my son, who came up to Senator Chambers, and he shook their hand, and their faces beamed. And I remember a few months ago out at Westside Middle School when Senator Chambers went out and talked to an 8th grade class, and for an hour did magic tricks and talked to them about the values that they needed to have to live a good life. To me, the importance of Ernie Chambers' Judiciary Committee room is that. His love of children, reflected in the work he's done in education, but most importantly, reflected in just the expressions on the faces of those children that see him and talk to him. It's an amazing thing. And so from now into the future, as long as this building is here, which I trust will be a long, long time, the children of today and the children of tomorrow will see that name and will never forget, nor will we, nor will anyone in this state forget the contribution that Senator Chambers has made. Thank you, and I certainly urge Mr. Lieutenant Governor the adoption of LR404.
Thank you, Senator Ashford. You have heard the opening of Legislative Resolution 404. Speaker Flood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in support of LR404. And without going into great detail, I want to talk to you about a day that changed my perspective on our senior member. I was a second-year state senator. The year was 2006, and there was a group of school children from Washington Elementary in Norfolk down to the Capitol on their 4th grade trip to see state government and how it works. And my office said they're in the rotunda. They've just spent about 20 minutes watching the session from the balcony. And I went up to the rotunda, and there were 25 kids in the class. There was one African-American student. And I talked to them about the legislature and how it works and the process that we employ and what state senators do. And then I said, are there any questions? And the one African-American student looked up and he said, is that the same Ernie Chambers that's in our Nebraska history book? I said, yes, it's the same Senator Chambers. And then he asked me another question. He said, how do I get to be like him? Thoughts raced through my mind at that point. And I thought about it for a second, and I looked at him in the eye, and I said, you know what? If you want to be like Senator Chambers, you listen very carefully all day in school. You follow the directions on your homework. You go home, and you get your homework done quick. You read everything. And when you're done with your homework, you read every book you can get your hands on, and you question everything. And that young man at that point looked inspired. He looked like he was a man on a mission. He had made a decision right there that he was going to be a state senator, and he was less impressed with his own state senator after watching Senator Chambers work on the floor while he was giving us the business. And at that moment, I recognized what Senator Chambers' contribution to this state has been. For a young man that probably didn't have a lot of hope or ever think about working in the legislature as a state senator, he saw somebody that day that he could identify with, that he respected, that was articulate, that was exceptionally bright, and was controlling the discussion that day in the legislature. And that's when I decided I knew the value of what Senator Chambers brings in here each day. And while this may be anecdotal, that's one hell of a good legacy to leave behind. And I intend to support the resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Speaker Flood. Senator Avery.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honored colleagues, I entered this legislature just 2 years ago, and I feel very honored that I was able to get here before Senator Chambers left. But I have an additional reason for asking to speak. We ought not adjourn today without recognizing that we're about to complete the final session of the 100th anniversary of this legislature. We are privileged to serve in a unique institution. Now, I've spent most of my life, and many of you know this, studying government and governmental processes. And after 2 years here, I am convinced that we serve in the most open and the most accountable institution in the country. We may not always get everything right, but I believe that we do so more than we do not. So as we end this 100th legislature, let us celebrate this honorable institution, and let us honor all those past and present who have helped make this the proud institution that it is. And it's appropriate that we do this while we celebrate the unequaled career of a person who has served here nearly 40% of those 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Avery. Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor and members of the legislature. Most of us don't see Ernie as being a sentimental type person. I'm going to share one experience with you that was really a wonderful time in my life in this legislature. And it wasn't because my wife was sick that I was feeling so good. I was feeling very down and really rushed to get back and forth to the sessions. And Ernie stopped me in a step one day and he says, "Don't think I don't know what's going on with you, Dwight. What are you doing here? You got better places to be." I'll never forget that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Peterson. Senator Shimmick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and members. I rise in support of LR404, and I do it for all the reasons that Senator Ashford and Senator Flood spoke about. I think there is a unique and very touching relationship between Ernie and children. I remember hearing him one day on this floor talk about how he dealt with his own children and how he'd get down on the floor on his hands and knees and play with those children. And I think there's a sincere love of children. But I also rise because Senator Chambers has spent so many years on the Judiciary Committee that I think it's very appropriate that that room is the one that is chosen. Over the years, he has listened to prisoners' concerns. He has acted on their behalf. He has very much been an advocate for fairness in the justice system. He has cast an eagle eye upon the judiciary itself, and he has called to task when he thought they misbehaved the judges in our judicial system. And he has been just a stalwart in making sure that people get justice and that it's administered fairly. And so I'm very supportive of LR404, and I thank you, Senator Ashford, for your leadership in this matter. It's been a pleasure serving on the Judiciary Committee this year with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Shimmick. Senator Preister.
Thank you, Honorable President. Friends all, I should get up and oppose this, and that was good. I didn't even expect to laugh yet. And usually I'm so dry that that doesn't happen. But the reason that I should oppose it is because Senator Chambers is not somebody that wants to draw attention to himself. He's not somebody that wants his name up in lights. It gets there, but it's only for a purpose. It's only for an educational purpose. He used that purpose when he was questioning me earlier about fluoride. And he asked me, he said, should I change my vote because I respect you, Senator Preister, and because you're telling me that this is good for kids? And he was saying, in effect, that he wanted to do what he believed was right and wanted to know if I respected that enough to give him my permission or my thoughts for him to vote the way he wanted to. So the way he would want me to vote on this, in some ways, is no. He wouldn't want this. But Senator Chambers, you taught me well in that lesson. So I'm going to vote the way, in my heart, I feel is the right way to vote. And I'm going to vote for it. And I'm going to vote for it because you've taught me a lot of life lessons on this floor over my last 16 years. You have been a master storyteller. You have used word and the expression of word to weave stories and to challenge each of us, particularly those of us who are Catholic and who are Christian. You have challenged us to not just believe what a book says. You have challenged us to take that and to put it into action. You have challenged us and taught us by questioning us whether or not we care about those that are imprisoned, whether or not we care about those who are downtrodden and impoverished. You have continually challenged, cajoled, and used stories to bring us out and to think and to question whether or not we have practiced what we preach. You have done it over and over. You have been as patient in your education as a good instructor could ever be. You do it with children, but you do it with adults. I have not always learned the lessons, and sometimes I've had to have them repeated. You have been an instructor in understanding and listening. Just as many of the times I spoke, you weren't even on the floor when I was talking about fluoride, you still knew what I said, and you repeated some of that back today. You listen, you show understanding, and you demonstrate respect for all people. It's appropriate that, as Senator Ashford said, it's a shoddy room. The judiciary is not flashy, it's not showy. It's just the way Senator Chambers instructs. He's not flashy, he's not showy, he doesn't put on pretense, he doesn't wear a tie and pretend that he's somebody that he's not. He goes by Ernie. I have never met a more earnest person who spent his entire life in the chambers. It may be coincidence, I don't know, but a more appropriately named person I have never met. It's appropriate that a plain room bears the label of a very outstanding, unplain, unpretentious man who would have you think that he's just Ernie, just a very regular person who looks out for regular people and helps all of us to go inside of ourselves, to look more deeply, and become more and better of who and what we are and can be. It's an honor for me to have served with Senator Ernie Chambers, who I consider a friend, an advocate, the champion of the downtrodden, who I admire and respect and will say so publicly. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Preister. Senator Dirks.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is my 18th year as a member of the legislature, and all 18 of those years I served with Senator Chambers. For 10 of those years, I was chairman of the Committee on Agriculture, and Senator Chambers was always a member of that committee. He had an innate ability to know exactly what was going on. He understood the ag issues better than anyone that I know. He might not be there for the hearings, but he'd be listening in his office. And we came to an executive session, he knew exactly what we were doing. He was always a strong supporter of rural Nebraska. He understood the work ethic of people who are raising food for our citizens, and he respected that. I have to tell you one little story. When I was defeated in my 5th term, the staff in the legislature had a farewell party for me. And the only people who were invited were staff. Well, Senator Chambers came to the room where we were having the party. And he said, "Cap, I just wanted to tell you goodbye. And if I can ever do anything to help you, you let me know what it is." And I said, "Well, Ernie, what about rural Nebraska?" He said, "Especially for rural Nebraska." So Ernie's been a great champion, I think, of the farming industry and the ranching industry in this state, and I appreciate him for that. And I have no question in my mind that I will miss the efforts of Senator Ernie Chambers in this legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dirks. Senator Lathrop.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I wanted to join in the remarks and obviously in support of the resolution, and I was trying to think of what exactly I wanted to say. You know, when I think of Senator Chambers, I have the kind of a relationship one has to a mentor because I've had occasion to serve with him in the Judiciary Committee. I can tell you when I first came down here, I went through this roster that we all have, and I was reading what my new colleagues do for a living, and I got to Ernie Chambers, and I thought I was going to say he was a barber, because that's what I always thought he did for a living, and it said Defender of the Downtrodden, and I kind of smiled and then spent 2 years down here. And it means something to be a defender of the downtrodden, because we have no lobby for the downtrodden. Nobody's paid to stand out in the rotunda and speak for those on death row, for black youth who are victims of gun violence in North Omaha, for poor kids and black kids in North Omaha and their school system, and for small farmers, and for many of the groups that include the downtrodden. And in the last 150 days, I've seen what it's like to have someone here to speak for the downtrodden. I'm not going to suggest that he's the only one, because there are people here of conscience. But I think Ernie has, to me, set an example, and that is we can take up many issues here, but ultimately the downtrodden will be defended by our conscience, and Ernie is a man of conscience, a man of determination, and it has been an honor to serve with him for 2 years, and I will express for myself and the people of the state of Nebraska my appreciation for his service to this state. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lathrop. Senator McDonald.
Mr. President, members of the body, I've had the opportunity to serve with Senator Chambers the last 2 years in Judiciary. We all have our own stories that we can remember how Ernie has touched our lives. When I came down here, and and my husband had passed away. Many senators were giving me their condolences. Ernie made a special trip to come down to my office, and he sat down, and he, with a tear in his eye, he's not going to want to know that I'm saying this, and said, "I want to tell you, I have a soft heart." And I've seen that soft heart many, many times since then. He hides it well. The second time I had a relationship with Ernie, he came down to my office angry. He'd called and wanted to know if I was going to be in the office, and my office said yes, I was going to be there. He comes down to my office angry. And I'm shocked. I mean, I'm thinking, what did I do? What did I do to upset Senator Chambers? And he told me, he says, "I heard you're engaged." And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you never asked me." And I said, "Ernie, I didn't know I was supposed to ask you." And I'm still not sure to this day why I needed to ask Ernie. But deep in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? Ernie is the senior member here. We're all his children. And being a child of Ernie, I was to ask the parent if I could get married. But the other part of it, he has taught us all. He has been that figure, and we has been his children, and he has taught us many, many lessons that we will take forward. He will be sadly missed, but we have learned many, many things from our friend and colleague, Senator Ernie Chambers.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Whiteman.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the body. This morning I referred to Senator Chambers as someone akin to Mentor Graham. Now, most of you have never heard of Mentor Graham. Mentor Graham was a teacher in a small town in New Salem, Illinois. And Abraham Lincoln moved to that town when he was about 19 years old, was a storekeeper, was a surveyor, and he learned most of what he knew, or at least his early learning. He was, I say, 19 years of age at that time. He had, I think, 1 year of formal education at that time. And I think to all of us in this body, probably over the last 38 years, Ernie Chambers has been a mentor to all of us. I came in here almost 70 years of age, and I certainly consider him a mentor, and I think probably everyone does. So I think one of his great services to the state of Nebraska is mentoring all legislators that have been here over that period of time, and he's certainly done a great job of it. I think he's made deeper thinkers of all of us. So I want to express my appreciation to him. And I realize he's done many other great things. He's certainly been a champion of the less fortunate, the downtrodden, but he has also made us better legislators. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Whiteman. Senator Dubas.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor, members of the body. I think this is very appropriate that we have this resolution before us today. I remember one of the first times being on the floor during debate, and Senator Chambers was asking some senators some questions, and I started shaking myself, thinking, I don't know if I ever want to stand up and say anything, because gosh, I don't want him to ask me any questions. But I also thought at that very moment, Senator Chambers makes me come to this floor prepared, because I better be prepared in case he does ask me a question. And I want to be able to represent the issue that I'm going to speak to. I want to be able to represent it with intelligence. I want to be able to articulate it so it can be understood. And I don't want to be afraid of Senator Chambers asking me questions. And so those thoughts go through my mind every single time I get up to speak or I prepare for whatever it is that I'm going to introduce on the floor. I hold a lot of community meetings, and invariably I'm asked the same question at every community meeting. Tell me about Senator Chambers. And that's what I tell people. And I also tell people, I wish you could see the Senator Chambers that we get to see. because you see the person, you see the TV persona, you see the things that Ernie wants you to see, but you don't get to see some of the things that we get to see. Like Senator McDonald said about the soft heart, even though he tells me quite frequently he doesn't have one. I know that's not true. You know, I've seen him interact with children and animals, and he's been nothing but kind and gracious and respectful to me. He's helped me understand this process. Again, he's encouraged me and incentivized me to be a better senator. And I think I started thinking the other day, what kind of words would I use to describe Senator Chambers, and I think that list would go on, because I don't think there's hardly an adjective in existence that you couldn't apply to Senator Chambers in one way or another. He's one of the most infuriating yet gracious people. He is knowledgeable. He is, you know, the list just goes on and on and on. And I think, as Senator Whiteman said, we're all better legislators because of Senator Chambers. And I hope that just because he's gone, that doesn't mean we aren't going to pick up the gauntlet where he left it off and challenge the new people that come in, and continue to challenge ourselves to know and understand the issues, to be strong in our convictions, to not back away from the things that we believe in, and not to be afraid to say the things that need to be said, even if they might not be politically correct at the moment. So I stand in wholehearted support of this resolution.
Thank you, Senator DuBois. Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I've been here 9 years now, and one thing I learned from Senator Chambers is I think I know him pretty well enough to say that he's probably in his office right now working, but he's watching this out of his corner of his eye, and he's probably getting pretty sick of it. So I'm not going to belabor or drag this out. Just want to say briefly, I love you, man. Go for it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Aguilar. Senator Pauls.
Mr. President, members of the body, I just need to say a couple things. Tomorrow morning I'm going to be speaking to a high school group, and one of the questions that they emailed me today is, what do I think of Ernie Chambers? It's quite interesting, similar to what Speaker Flood. 2 years ago, my son, who's a sophomore in high school, I invited him down to see this process in action. And his first thing is, well, when am I going to get to see Senator Chambers? It had nothing to do with me. Almost every Saturday, I have breakfast at a midtown restaurant in the city of Omaha. And by chance, Senator Chambers is also in that same restaurant with his son. I am amazed by, because I observe an awful lot that's going on, because it's a relatively large restaurant. I'm amazed how many people stop at his table and almost treat him reverently. They talk to him a little bit, then they back away. It's an exciting thing to see how somebody really shows their affection to that individual. But I'm approaching this at a different direction right now. See, I see this as a celebration. And I will see this part as a celebration in Ernie's or Senator Chambers' next step, that if he runs, very honestly, the learning community in the Omaha area, because they need his expertise and to help that school system. So although we may lose something here, I truly believe that the children in the city or the metro area of Omaha could benefit from this person's ability to walk into a situation and analyze it, and yes, be critical, but you won't be able to talk around him. Because I truly believe, if you've heard what people are saying today, all the things he has for children, that would be a major impact. So I am encouraging him. In fact, I told him earlier on the floor I would be mad at him, which I didn't really shake him up too much, that he needs to really seriously think about running for a position on that learning community to make the area schools better than what they are, and to give them a different direction and take a different look at how we treat children and educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pauls. Seeing no additional lights on, Senator Ashford, you're recognized to close on Legislative Resolution 404.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I have a sense that I'm going to get more than 20 votes on this one, I believe. Thank you all for what you've said. Again, thank you, Speaker Flood, and thank you to the members of the Judiciary Committee. We are so much a better place and so much a better state because of Senator Ernie Chambers. Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Senator Ashford. You have heard the closing. The question before the body is on the adoption of Legislative Resolution 404, recognizing Senator Ernie Chambers' years of service to the legislature and the state of Nebraska. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. Please record, Mr. Clerk.
48 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on the adoption of Legislative Resolution 404.
Legislative Resolution 404 is adopted.